Hey, this is Luke Charlton, and welcome to another episode of the Jumpstart Marketing Show. I'd like to introduce my business partner in crime, Jumpstart Jim. Say hey, Jim.
Hey, Jim. So
You gonna do
always
that?
obedient
You gonna do that every time we start this show?
every time. If you tell me to say it, I'm going to say it. I'm an obedient student.
So, Jim, this episode, I'm excited for this one because I saw it's about Star Wars and how we can learn from Star Wars to help grow our coaching business. So, I actually saw Star Wars a couple of days ago, the latest episode. Not I've seen the old episodes, but the latest episode. And personally, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was definitely better than the recent ones that George Lucas made, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
But I thought it also set up the series well for the coming 2 episodes. I liked the characters. I liked the casting of the characters as well.
Yep.
Again, yeah, I thought it was good. It wasn't amazing. I think sometimes we get built into the hype of these big movies that come out. So maybe my expectations were a little bit high, but I thought it was it was a solid film. However, with that being said, it looks like it's going to be. I don't even know. It might have even reached it now as we are recording this video blog. That's going to be probably the highest grossing film of all time. Now, I've seen better films than Star Wars, than the latest version of Star Wars, but again, it's going to be the highest grossing film of all time, most probably at least number 2, definitely. So that's billions and billions, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars that it's going to gross from this movie. That again is not the greatest movie of all time, a good movie, and I think that's what we want to talk about in today's training. How is just an ordinary movie by itself able to become one of the highest grossing films of all time? So I'm going to give my version of why I think that Star Wars is going to be the highest grossing film, and then Jim, you're going to give your version, and
Okay.
then we'll talk about how we can apply this to our coaching business to move forward. So for me, Hollywood screenwriters are, they're the probably the best storytellers in the world. They're master storytellers, and they're able to generate hundreds of millions of dollars from their movies because they're able to tell great stories. And the reason why people go to see movies is because of the way that these movies make them feel. So when we go to a movie, it's kind of like we're trying to suspend suspend reality for a couple of hours, step into the
Yeah.
character, and become that character and feel their emotions, go through their journey, and then come out and have that emotional experience that character was having. So again, that comes down to being really great at telling stories. So the reason why I think Star Wars is going to be one of the highest grossing films of all time is because the old school Star Wars, the originals, the episodes 4, 5, and 6, they were brilliant stories. They were great movies, but the story of Luke Skywalker going through and Darth Vader, the good versus evil, as you just mentioned before we jumped on this training, was a brilliant way of positioning that good versus evil in a new light, in a different way. But again, the reason why those were very successful is because of the way that those movies made the viewer feel going through it and after, and this is why they gross so many hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. So the reason why I think Star Wars, this new one that's just come out, is going to be one of the highest grossing films of all time, is because the people that are going to see this new version are kind of wanting to relive that feeling that they first felt when they went through that amazing trilogy of the original Star Wars, and they want to recapture that. It's almost a nostalgic type effect, and J.J. Abrams, the director, has kind of leveraged that. And even George Lucas said he didn't actually really like the new Star Wars because what they've kind of made is a retro version of the old one. But again, that's what people want in a way. They want to relive that feeling when they first saw that original Star Wars. So that's why I think this new Star Wars is going to be the highest grossing film of all time, not because it's the best film of all time, but simply because it's leveraging those feelings that the people originally felt in those first few episodes of why they were successful. So it's kind of like they're piggybacking off the success of the old ones and the feelings. So again, I'll switch it over to you, and you can let me know what your thoughts are on why you think it's going to be one of the biggest films of all time.
Yeah, well, and that being said, I mean, when the originals came out, I was a young person, and I was actually in the theaters, and I saw what was happening at that time. And yeah, the reality versus the fantasy. The fantasy did make it the good versus evil, and it gave us a new perspective on some great characters, some intense characters. And what I think was really smart was, like I said, I went through. I was young enough to me the movie, or I'm old enough to say that I was a young person in the movie theaters during those early times, those early shows. And as that momentum built, what was really interesting is when the second three came out, which everybody understands by now, which the second three really are. You know, my kids now saw the second ones. They weren't old enough. They had the DVDs, and now they're massively enjoying all six of those episodes. So by the time this one came out, now it's basically pulled that generation from the '70s, me, up to the people who are in their 30s, 20s, and 30s, and now to like my teenagers. And I have three kids and a wife. Now my wife saw the original one 10 times, possibly 12 times in the theater. She was absolutely addicted to it.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm sort of the guy who, I mean, I grew up, loving wars and fighting, and I was taught. I was already in martial arts by that time, and I really liked it, but I didn't love it. And it's funny. I think we're going to get a lot of hate mail because we keep talking about this one. It was a good movie, but not a great movie. I agree with you. It was sort of, I get it. It wasn't, but I was never really that big of a. I was never a huge Star Wars fan, whereas my family loved it. So let me give you an idea. You just mentioned storytellers. My wife saw this one, and I was sort of like you. It was good. I understand it, but she said she came to almost to tears 4 times in this movie because her feelings from the early in the '70s and the '80s really pulled forward for her, and she related so much deeper than even my teenagers could, because my teenagers were like, actually my 2 sons were like, yeah, it was really good, but there wasn't as much action in this one. And it was funny because they're looking at it as it was really good though. They were so into it because they're so into the brand. They're so into and we're going to be discussing this in a second, the brand and the marketing. And the other benefit that has happened since this one came out is one, they joined forces with Disney. So they had other advantages marketing wise. And we're not going to say it's just marketing and that leverage, but it was really that storytelling and presenting that story and bringing that story forward so that you brought generations and generations and generations. Or, as we're going to discuss in a second, once you have a reputation and you're able to build on it. So even if you don't put together the greatest thing, there are still people who will jump up and down and excited because all those emotions from the past, even if you deliver a decent product, they'll sometimes consider it a fantastic product. And I know that happens with several gurus who you might see on TV actually. And the gurus will tell you backstage, it's not my best, but I get great response now because momentum is built, like you said, the snowball effect. So yeah, it's amazing how my wife was probably the better example of just how she was actually moved to tears almost 4 times in this movie. And my kids were like, it was great. I wanted more action, but it was great. And I was like, so it's two different generations of people who loved it. And then you got the oddballs like us who were like, it's okay.
Well, actually, I thought it actually had quite a bit of action for Star Wars. I thought it was pretty non-stop most of the way.
Oh, remember we're talking about teenage boys here. They want
That's
more.
true.
They got more fights, more. And the great thing, everybody said the same thing. The great thing was the casting, the way they brought in.
Love the casting.
Completely new people.
Yep.
No, like they didn't put Brad Pitt in as the bad. See how I could ask my kids; they know the names of the people. Brad Pitt's not the bad guy. You didn't have any preconceived ideas. So yeah, I think the casting is really cool too.
Yeah, I love the Kylo Ren guy. He's a great actor, and I'm interested to see like how they do the because they're kind of like cousins, aren't they? Is that Luke Skywalker's daughter? I think they alluded to that. They didn't really say it, but that was
Rey is. Yeah,
that's the assumption.
Rey is.
Yeah. But anyway.
And you're asking me these questions. I could have my kids here. They know all this.
But anyway, okay. Let's get back to how does this apply? How can we apply, what Star Wars has done to our own coaching business? So for me, Jim, we've had some great sales conversations the last couple of weeks, and one of the things I noticed with people jumping on the line, like a lot of them had gone through our the Jumpstart, the masterclass that we did. I think it was a 5-week training series.
Right.
And a lot of them, once they'd gone through that, they came onto the line, and it almost felt like, a lot of them would say, this is an honor to be on the phone with you. Like they kind of felt like a rock star in a way. Like they really did see us as an authority. And it was like a big deal for them to be on the phone with us. And that was only because they had gone through that the 5-week masterclass. So for me, if we're trying to, coming back to making our customers feel a certain way, and then we can leverage that to make more sales. So sending someone, say, through a training course is a great way. I mean, they're stuck emotionally, right? So they've got a problem in their life, whether we're, helping them with relationships or business or, whatever, losing weight or whatever it might be. The reason why they're signing up with us as coaches is because they want to feel a different way. At the end of the day, they're buying emotion. So by going through, say, a free training course, we can help them overcome a few challenges in their life, not as many as if they were working one-on-one with us in the coaching or group coaching program, but we can really help them move forward. And when we do that, we are creating these emotions, these feelings in them, and that's coming from us as coaches, just by delivering great content in our blog posts or a free training course, for example. So for me, the first action point that I want to kind of communicate here to do, if we want to build this momentum for our own company in a way where down the line, if we're our own guru in the marketplace, if we put out something that's not as great as it could be, I'm not saying that we should always put out the best that we can. And I'm saying it's very, very powerful to leverage our own momentum. We build a little bit and it snowballs and it snowballs. So that's what business is always like. So to start building that momentum for ourselves and making our customers feel a certain way about us, I believe it's about putting out great content that gives our clients, prospects, a great emotional experience, helps them overcome some challenges that they're currently going through. Again, that'll trigger that great emotional experience. And again, that comes down to, for me, is putting out great content. And to be able to do that, number one, we spoke about, I think the last episode was choosing your target market, understanding who that client is inside and out, and then you're going to be able to trigger those emotions. And I know that we're also going to speak about another way to leverage this Star Wars thing as well. Do you remember that?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, based on what you just said and spinning that off, two things that coaches do, consultants do, information marketers do, is one, they try to make it perfect. They try to make it that first Star Wars. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to get something out there.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing, and this is like the target, finding the target market and asking them how they feel. What are their words? Well, it's the same thing. Just because you and I don't think this Star Wars was great doesn't mean that the rest of the world doesn't. Well, it's the same with your webinar. You may not feel like it was really important, or your information marketing product might not feel like it was the greatest. But you know what? You might impact 100 or 1,000 people who think it's perfect right for them right now. And that's what typically happens is people get held up with not putting stuff out. And in reality, you're still making that bond. If you have a video recording like this, or an audio, or even text, you can still touch people's heart because you're speaking to their problems. So again, if you're asking right questions, you understand what their problems are and you can speak to their heart. And yes, that builds. Now, in our case, we happen to have put that 5-piece course together, the FAME model together, and we spoke really from the heart. And what was really funny is, if you consider going back over the overview, my whole reason for putting that together was actually dark side versus the light side of the Force. Not Star Wars, but I really am sort of an anti-guru. I'm really frustrated with the gurus, not because of what the gurus offer, because they all offer good content. What I get frustrated with is because the marketing side you got to ask more questions. So my goal was, let's get them to ask better questions. Let's help people understand what really happens with credibility and celebrity. Let's help people understand that go ahead and put that content out no matter what's happening. But that will build your brand. And by building your brand and communicating with people on a regular basis, it's like dating. It really is. You've heard that. I'm sure many of the listeners of this video have heard this before. You can't go from first date. You can't go from, hi, how you doing? Let's get married. It doesn't work that way. No matter how, even in fairy tales, it doesn't go like that. But, go on the first date, then the second date, then you get to know each other, third, fourth, and you eventually build up to that where that relationship is a bond, and you end up, like my wife and I married for 21 years. I still say, "Are you married?" I've been ecstatically married for 21 years. Every year, and I always use the word ecstatically married. It builds and builds and builds. Well, that's the way your coaching is going to be for people too. It'll build, even if you don't think it's perfect, build on it, move it forward. And again, bringing the next generation of people along. I mean, usually we're talking coaching and everybody's talking about making money now, but really if you put something out now and in 6 months from now and a year from now, you're really helping those people build that relationship with you one way or the other, whether it's perfect for them right then or perfect for you and you thought it was the greatest thing you put out there. So yeah, combining those questions and learning about the target market, really just committing to great content, talking from the heart, and more importantly, to people's hearts. That's going to be a really big way of pulling people forward. Like I said, from the past to the next and that momentum builds. And that's where a lot of these coaches, especially the high-end coaches that are right now selling, they make it sound like it's so easy to sell. Well, what you don't realize is they've spent 10 and 15 years building like Star Wars did.
Yep.
They built a fan club, so by the time they're presenting a great idea or a new idea, they say, "Oh, see, it wasn't that hard for me to sell that. All I had to do was just make the post." Well, yeah, but you developed a relationship of 34 hours of training beforehand over the last 7 years.
Yep.
That's why the people are willing to come on board with you. You've already built the relationship. They know who you are. They know what you teach. And that being said, that should not stop a coach from getting started with the smallest of any content to put out there, as long as it's coming from the heart and as long as it's telling your story. So
absolutely. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up. But thanks, Jim. I think that said it really, really well. So great insights there. And one of the things that maybe we'll talk about in upcoming episodes is just to be curious on how other people are becoming successful in marketing, not just other coaches, but other movies, for example, other companies. I think that just that's what Jim and I do, because we love marketing. We observe, and then how can we apply that to our own business? So I think it's another message in this training here. So again, thanks, Jim. Another great episode, and we'll see you on the next training.
All right, thanks, Luke, and thanks everybody else.
Cheers.